I want a divorce. I'm taking half of everything, and I'm leaving tonight." Those words hung in the air of our kitchen like smoke after a gunshot. My wife stood there, arms crossed, chin raised, expecting me to crumble, to beg, to negotiate. I looked up from my coffee and nodded once. Okay. The confusion that flickered across her face was almost worth the 15 years I'd wasted. I'm 47. Been married for 15 years. No kids, thank God. We built what looked like a successful life together. A consulting firm that I started from scratch, 2 properties, investments, the whole American dream package. From the outside, we were perfect. From the inside, I'd been sleeping in the guest room for 8 months. She waited for me to say more. When I didn't, she laughed. Actually laughed. That's it. Just okay. I took another sip of coffee. What else do you want me to say? You've clearly made up your mind. Don't you want to know why? Not particularly. That threw her. She'd rehearsed this scene, I could tell. Probably practiced her lines in the car, maybe even discussed them with whoever she'd been texting at 2 in the morning for the past 4 months. Fine, she snapped. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. And just so you know, I've already consulted with him. I know exactly what I'm entitled to. I'm sure you do. She grabbed her purse and keys, threw a few things into an overnight bag, and stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there for another 10 minutes, finishing my coffee in the sudden quiet. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, the one I'd been working with for the past 6 months. Mitchell? It's happening. She just left. Same timeline we discussed. Yeah. She said her lawyer would contact me tomorrow. Perfect. I'll have everything ready. I hung up and looked around the kitchen. Our kitchen. Soon to be just my kitchen. The granite countertops she'd insisted on. The farmhouse sink that cost more than my first car. The espresso machine she used exactly 3 times before going back to instant coffee. Funny how you can live with someone for 15 years and watch them become a stranger. Or maybe realize they always were one. The call came at 9:30 the next morning. This is Douglas Hoffman from Hoffman & Associates. I represent your wife in the matter of your dissolution of marriage. I know who you are, Douglas. I'd done my research. Mid-tier divorce attorney. Aggressive but sloppy. Took too many cases, spread himself thin. Perfect for someone who thought they had the upper hand. Right? Well, I'm calling to discuss the terms of the separation. My client is seeking an equitable distribution of all marital assets, which includes the house on Maple Street, the vacation condo in Aspen, the joint investment accounts, the business assets, and 50% of my retirement accounts. Did I miss anything? Silence on the other end. That's correct. You seem to be informed about this process. I try to stay informed about things that matter. I assume you'll be sending over the initial filing? Yes, we'll be filing tomorrow. I wanted to reach out as a courtesy to see if we could settle this amicably without. I'll have my attorney contact you. His name is Mitchell Bradford. I'm sure you've heard of him. Another pause. Longer this time. Bradford? The Bradford from Bradford, Wells, and Cummings. That's the one. I see. Well, yes. Have him contact my office. He hung up faster than he'd called. I sat back in my office chair and allowed myself a small smile. Bradford, Wells, and Cummings didn't handle many divorces. They were a corporate litigation firm with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. Mitchell was a partner who'd helped me structure my business assets years ago. We'd played golf together, had drinks, became friends. When I'd first noticed the distance growing between my wife and me, I'd mentioned it to him over bourbon one night. He'd listened, asked careful questions, and then said something I'd never forgotten. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, especially in marriage. So I'd started preparing. She called me that afternoon, her voice shrill with anger. Bradford? You hired Mitchell Bradford. You said you'd consulted with your lawyer. I consulted with mine. That's not the same thing. He's a corporate attorney. That's complete overkill for a simple divorce. Is it? You were the one who wanted to take half of everything. I figured I should have someone who knows how to protect business assets. This is insane. We can settle this like adults. That's what I thought we were doing. Your lawyer contacts mine. They work out the details. We sign papers. Very adult. You know what I mean. I did. She meant I was supposed to roll over. Let her take what she wanted. Be grateful she was leaving without making a bigger scene. Look, I said, keeping my voice calm. I agreed to the divorce. You want half. Fine. But there are legal ways to determine what half actually means. That's what lawyers are for. I can't believe you're doing this. Doing what? Hiring legal representation? You hired a lawyer first. She hung up on me. 2 hours later, Douglas Hoffman called again. His tone was different this time. Careful. Almost nervous. Mister, I mean, yes, I've been in contact with Mitchell Bradford. He's asked for extensive documentation regarding the business assets, all financial records going back 7 years, and he's indicated that his client is prepared to contest the characterization of certain properties as marital assets. Sounds thorough. With all due respect, this approach is going to make the process significantly more expensive and time-consuming for both parties. Then I guess we should both get comfortable. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting? The four of us. Sometimes face-to-face conversations can resolve issues that phone calls and emails cannot. I considered it. Sure. Set it up. The meeting happened 3 days later in Mitchell's conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Mahogany table that could seat 20. Everything designed to intimidate. My wife showed up in a designer dress I'd never seen before. Her lawyer wore an off-the-rack suit that didn't quite fit right. Mitchell was in his element. Custom-tailored, perfectly pressed, every silver hair in place. He didn't shake hands with Hoffman, just nodded toward the chairs across from us. Shall we begin? Hoffman opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. We've prepared a preliminary asset division proposal that we believe represents a fair and equitable distribution based on the length of the marriage and the contributions of both parties. He slid the folder across the table. Mitchell didn't touch it. Before we review that, I'd like to clarify a few things. The business, the consulting firm, was started by my client 3 years before the marriage. He was the sole founder, sole investor, and sole operator. The marital estate includes growth that occurred during the marriage, but not the founding assets themselves. That's not. My wife started. The house on Maple Street, Mitchell continued smoothly, was purchased with funds from my client's inheritance from his late mother. While improvements were made during the marriage with marital funds, the property itself is separate property. Her face went red. We lived there together. I picked out everything. The vacation condo, Mitchell said, was purchased 18 months ago. The down payment came entirely from my client's business account. The mortgage is in his name only. Your name was added to the title as a courtesy, not as a reflection of financial contribution. Douglas shifted in his seat. Now, wait a minute. The joint investment accounts represent commingled funds, agreed. We're prepared to split those 50-50. The retirement accounts accumulated during the marriage are also divisible. But the business, the primary residence, and the vacation property are not marital assets in the way your filing suggests. I watched my wife process this. Watch the confidence drain from her face. You're lying, she said. You added me to everything. You said we were partners. I spoke for the first time since sitting down. I said we were partners in marriage, not in business. There's a difference. This is bullshit. Mitchell didn't even blink. We have documentation for everything I've stated. Purchase agreements, inheritance records, business formation documents, title transfers, mortgage applications. All of it substantiates my client's position. Douglas looked at the folder in front of him like it might bite. My client was under the impression that all assets acquired during the marriage were subject to equitable distribution. Many are, Mitchell agreed. But not all. Certainly not assets that predate the marriage or were acquired through inheritance or gift. And not a business that existed before the marriage, even if it grew during the marriage. The growth is still marital property. Some of it, yes. We're prepared to offer a reasonable settlement based on the actual marital assets. But your client's expectation of walking away with half of everything is not supported by law or fact. The room went quiet. My wife stared at me across the table. When did you do this? When did you plan all of this? I didn't plan anything. I just paid attention to the advice I was given when we got married. Keep good records. Don't commingle assets unnecessarily. Protect yourself. You never trusted me. I trusted you for 15 years. But trust doesn't mean stupidity. She stood up so fast her chair scraped across the floor. This isn't over. Actually, Mitchell said calmly, it's fairly straightforward from here. We can continue to litigate, which will cost you tens of thousands of dollars and likely result in the same outcome. Or we can negotiate a reasonable settlement based on what the law actually allows. Douglas gathered his papers. We'll need time to review the documentation you've provided. Of course. Take all the time you need. They left without another word. Mitchell closed his folder and looked at me. Well handled. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You stayed calm, didn't engage emotionally, and let the facts speak for themselves. Most people can't do that in these situations. I've had practice. He raised an eyebrow. How long have you known? That she wanted out? About a year. That she was planning to take everything? 6 months. And you just waited? What else was I supposed to do? Confront her? Fight? That just speeds up the timeline and makes everything messier. Better to prepare quietly and let her make the first move. Mitchell leaned back in his chair. You know, in 25 years of practice, I've learned that the person who cares less about emotions and more about strategy almost always wins in these situations. I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying not to lose. Same thing in this context. Maybe he was right. The harassment started that night. Text messages. Dozens of them. You planned this. You manipulated everything. I gave you 15 years of my life. You're going to regret this. I'll fight you on every single thing. My family was right about you. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the calls from her mother, her sister, a cousin I'd met exactly twice. All of them telling me what a terrible person I was, how I destroyed her, how I was stealing what was rightfully hers. I let them all go to voicemail. On day 4, she showed up at the house. I'd changed the locks, Mitchell's advice, so she couldn't get in. She pounded on the door for 10 minutes before finally giving up. She left a note taped to the door. I know about everything. I know what you did. You think you're so smart, but I have proof. You're going to pay for this. I took a picture of the note and sent it to Mitchell. His response was immediate. Don't engage. Document everything. Change your passwords. Check your credit reports. Good advice. I spent that evening securing everything I could think of. Bank accounts, email, social media, credit cards. I put alerts on all of my financial accounts. I called the credit bureaus and put a freeze on my credit. When I checked my business email, I found 3 messages from clients saying my wife had contacted them. She'd told them I was going through a difficult divorce and might not be able to fulfill my contracts. She'd suggested they might want to look for alternative consultants. That crossed a line. I forwarded the emails to Mitchell. This time he called instead of texting. This is tortious interference. She's actively trying to damage your business. Can we do anything about it? Document everything. I'll send a cease and desist letter to her attorney. If she continues, we can seek an injunction and possibly damages. Will that make things worse? Probably. But letting her destroy your livelihood isn't an option. He was right. The cease and desist letter went out the next morning. By noon, Douglas Hoffman called me directly. My client is very upset. She feels she's being bullied and intimidated by your legal tactics. Your client contacted my business clients and tried to sabotage my contracts. She was simply reaching out to people she knew from social events, and she committed tortious interference. If she does it again, we'll file for damages and an injunction. Make sure she understands that. This kind of aggressive posturing isn't helping anyone. Neither is trying to destroy my business. Tell her to stop. I hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, Mitchell called with an update. They've revised their settlement proposal. They're dropping the claims to the house and the business, but insisting on the vacation condo and 60% of the investment accounts. Why 60%? No idea. Probably just trying to save face. They know they don't have a case for it, but they want to feel like they won something in negotiation. What do you think? I think we counter with 50% of the investments, which is fair, and offer them $25,000 for her to walk away from any claim on the condo. It's worth about $400,000, so we're essentially buying her out for a fraction of its value. She won't take that. Probably not the first time. But after another few weeks of legal bills, she might reconsider. The counteroffer went out that afternoon. The response came back within an hour. They rejected it. So we waited. Weeks turned into a month. The legal bills piled up on both sides. I knew they were bleeding her dry because Hoffman started calling more frequently, always trying to find a compromise, always suggesting we could save everyone time and money by just settling. Mitchell never budged. Patience, he told me. She's running out of money and running out of options. Eventually reality will set in. He was right. 6 weeks after the initial filing, Douglas called and accepted our counteroffer. 50% of the investments. $25,000 for the condo. She'd walk away with about $200,000 total, plus her car and personal belongings. Not the $500,000 plus she'd been expecting. The papers were drawn up and signed 2 weeks later. We met in Mitchell's office one final time. She wouldn't look at me, just signed where her lawyer indicated, grabbed her check, and walked out without a word. Douglas lingered for a moment. For what it's worth, I told her she was being unrealistic from the beginning. She wouldn't listen. People usually don't, Mitchell said. After they left, I sat in the conference room for a while, staring out at the city. How do you feel? Mitchell asked. Relieved. Tired. Empty. That's normal. Is it? You just ended a 15-year relationship. It's supposed to feel significant. I thought about that. About the 15 years. The slow drift from love to indifference. The separate bedrooms. The silent dinners. The realization that we'd become roommates who occasionally argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. I think it ended a long time before today, I said finally. Most marriages do. The paperwork is just making it official. 3 months later, I was having dinner alone at a small Italian place downtown when I saw her. She was with someone. A man about my age, maybe a little younger. They were laughing. Her hand on his arm. The way she used to touch me, back when things were good. She saw me at the same moment. The laughter died on her face. I nodded once. A simple acknowledgement. She turned away and said something to her date. They left a few minutes later without finishing their meal. I stayed and had dessert. The next morning, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I knew immediately it was from her. I hope you're happy. You got everything you wanted. You destroyed my life and walked away like it was nothing. I hope it was worth it. I read it twice. Then I deleted it and blocked the address. Because the truth was, I hadn't destroyed anything. I just refused to let myself be destroyed. There's a difference. A year later, I was sitting in my office when Mitchell called. You'll never guess who just contacted me for a consultation. Who? Douglas Hoffman. He's getting divorced. Wants to know if I'd represent him. I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. What did you tell him? I told him I'd think about it. But between you and me, I'm going to pass. The man doesn't learn from his mistakes. Most people don't. No. But the smart ones prepare anyway. I thought about that after we hung up. About preparation. About trust and verification. About the difference between being paranoid and being prudent. My business was thriving. I'd landed 3 new contracts in the past 6 months. The house was quiet but comfortable. The condo in Aspen was getting regular use. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, but it was nice to remember what connection felt like. Life moved on. But every now and then, I'd think about that moment in the kitchen. The moment she'd said she was taking half and leaving. The confidence in her voice. The certainty that she'd planned everything perfectly. And I'd remember the look on her face when she realized I'd planned better. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house on Maple Street. Too many memories. Too many rooms I didn't need. Too much space for one person. I bought a modern condo downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, open concept, minimalist design. Everything the opposite of the life I'd lived before. On moving day, I found a box in the back of the closet I'd forgotten about. Wedding photos. Anniversary cards. A pressed flower from our honeymoon. I sat on the floor of the empty house and looked through them. At the younger versions of ourselves. At the hope in our eyes. At the future we'd thought we were building. I wondered when it had started to fall apart. What the exact moment was when love turned to obligation. When partnership turned to cohabitation. When forever became temporary. Maybe there was no single moment. Maybe it was 1,000 tiny moments. 1,000 small disappointments. 1,000 little deaths of the dream we'd started with. Or maybe we'd just been 2 people who wanted different things and were too stubborn to admit it until the gap became too wide to bridge. I put the photos back in the box and left it in the empty house. Some things don't need to be carried forward. 5 years out, and I barely think about it anymore. The divorce. The confrontation. The months of legal maneuvering. It's just a chapter that ended. A story that ran its course. I'm 52 now. Still running my business. Still living downtown. Still occasionally dating, though nothing's stuck yet. Mitchell and I still play golf. He's retired now, spending more time with his grandkids. He asks me sometimes if I have any regrets. I tell him the truth. I regret the wasted years. The time spent in a marriage that was dying. But I don't regret how it ended. Because I learned something important in those months of preparation and confrontation. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone go, even if they're fighting to take everything with them. Sometimes strength isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to open your hands and let go. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just building a better life and moving forward without looking back. Last month, I ran into Douglas Hoffman at a bar association event. He looked older, more worn down. He'd lost weight, and not in a healthy way. He saw me and actually smiled. A tired, rueful smile. Still with Bradford's firm? Mitchell retired. But yes, I keep in touch. Good man. Great lawyer. He took a sip of his drink. I should have told my client to take your first offer. Probably. She remarried, you know? Guy she was seeing right after you two split. Lasted about 18 months. That's unfortunate. Is it? He looked at me curiously. You ever wonder what would have happened if you'd just given her what she wanted? Maybe she would have been satisfied. Maybe you two could have stayed friends. I considered the question. Really considered it. No, I said finally. Because it wasn't about the money or the assets. It was about respect. She didn't respect me enough to be honest about what she wanted. Didn't respect our marriage enough to try to fix it. And she didn't respect herself enough to walk away with dignity. And you did. I tried to. I didn't always succeed. But I tried. He nodded slowly. You know what I learned in my own divorce? What? That the person who can walk away with the least amount of bitterness is usually the person who wins in the end. Not because they got more money or kept more assets, but because they got their peace back. Did you get yours? Working on it. He raised his glass. Here's to working on it. I clinked my glass against his. Some lessons take longer to learn than others. That night, I stood in my condo looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my ex-wife was living her life. Hopefully happy. Hopefully at peace. Somewhere out there, Douglas Hoffman was going home to an empty house, still working on finding his. And here I was, 5 years and a lifetime away from the man who'd sat in his kitchen and heard his wife say she was taking half. The man who'd simply nodded and said okay. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Sometimes the greatest strength is in preparation, patience, and letting the other person show their hand first. And sometimes the best victory is the one where everyone walks away alive, even if nobody gets exactly what they wanted. I finished my drink and turned off the lights. Tomorrow was another day, another chance, another beginning. The past was filed away, documented, sealed. And the future? The future was unwritten. And that, I'd learned, was exactly how it should be.